Dear friends, I welcome all of you at Transl Academy. Allow me to remind you of our main focus. Transl Academy tries to embrace everything connected with new technologies, innovations in translation and interpretation, teaching of translation of interpretation, software, professionals. All in all, what we do is try to raise our own awareness and everyone's awareness of the translation and interpretation industry. Allow me to say a few words about myself. I'm a translator. My main foreign language is German. I'm also director of St. Petersburg School of Conference, Interpreting and Translation. This school trains interpreters for international organizations. And allow me please to now introduce our interpreters who will help us today. These are graduates of St. Petersburg School of Conference, Interpreting and Translation. They kindly agreed to help us today with interpretation from English into Russian and backwards. This is Evgenia Yakovchik and Timofey Minev. They're last year's graduates, the year 2018. I hope you will enjoy their work. I hope they help you. For Evgenia and Timofey, this is going to be, I hope, a fascinating piece of work. Thank you very much, Irina, for such a lovely introduction. Colleagues, good evening one more time. We welcome you at yet another Transl Academy webinar. And before we start introducing our main guest today, let me brief you on a few tech matters. This is the 10th webinar. However, time and again, we brief you on technical matters for your own convenience. As announced, the webinar will be interpreted from Russian into English and from English into Russian. At the bottom of the screen, you will see your language button. If you click on it, you'll see a drop-down menu. Please select your preferred language. Colleagues, this time our guest is Professor Juan José Arevalillo Doval. You might remember as we were wrapping up the previous season, we announced that we would be growing. So this season, depending, or rather regardless of whether our guest is a school or professional, all the webinars will split into 3 different groups: Transl Academy Schools, Transl Academy Tools, and Transl Academy People. Today is the first webinar in the Transl Academy People series. My colleague Irina will give you more information about our guest, so please, Irina, the floor is yours. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Alexander. So one more time, good evening. I'm happy to welcome you at our webinar. Today we talk with Professor Juan José Arevalillo Doval from Madrid in Spain. He's the Manager Director of Hermes Traducciones y Servicios Lingüísticos, SL. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, the speaker says. He's also Director of a postgraduate course which is called Localization and Translation Applied Technology. This is the program of Alfonso X El Sabio University of Madrid. Juan José is also the chairman of the Spanish Association of Translation Service Providers. He is one of the creators of translation standards. By those I mean EN 15038 and ISO 17100. Today we will cover localization. Right now, localization is a very topical issue. And we have every reason to say that localization is just part of translation. However, we sometimes think that translation is only part of localization. Localization is a wider issue. This is what we're going to cover. We will also speak about teaching localization, what should and shouldn't be academic, shouldn't be included into academic studies. We will speak about job opportunities and employment for graduates, about graduates as such who became our colleagues. So we have a wide range of issues to discuss. All of this is because our guest for today covers a lot of competences. He is competent both in interpretation and translation and teaching translation.
Good afternoon from Madrid. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Irina and Alexander for this opportunity to give you my pieces of advice to all of you regarding localization and translation industry in general. As it was said, by the way, the pronunciation of my name and surname was perfect, so everything is all right. Even I'm sure that it's more perfect than mine when trying to speak in some words in Russian. So let's say for a start, you see the information of my company. One of my profiles that could be a difference regarding others is that I'm very involved in university. I have an experience of more than 15 years in academic teaching regarding translation in general. So if you need any contact with me at any moment, please feel free to write to me to this address, because I will always answer in your emails and I will be very happy to do it. So here you have my address, that the one with at hermestrans.com is the place where you can reach me. So let's see first of all an introduction to localization. Localization, as you know, is very, very important and very present in translation industry. I would dare to say that some time ago it was around 1/3 or 1/4 of the things happening in translation industry were through localization. Now even it would be higher, because localization involves computing behind it, and everything that is in our daily lives today are related to computing in some way or another. If you are going to ATM to take some money, there is a computer behind. If you go into a website, there is another computer behind, and all the coding behind it. So it's present everywhere. So it's a very huge market for translators. So let's see what, how, whom, why, and what's missing. Here we have an idea, first of all, of you. Please think of this image, and you can write if you want, or you can think of it for yourself, what this means. Only a few seconds for your thoughts. What does this mean? Any fast suggestion? We would dare to say that there is something in the desert, said in Spanish, that it's somebody that is thirsty and drinking Coke or something like that, and surviving again, okay? That's the idea. That's the idea from our side. But what if you have seen this film? You know, this the curious case of Benjamin Button, like Brad Pitt. If you know this film, something strange happened. That it's just the other way. The things happen just the other way around. Not from the beginning to the end, but just more or less from the end to the beginning, just changing roles. I suppose you know this film. Okay, here you have this guy, Brad Pitt, and this other famous guy that is Juan José Arevalillo. And well, let's see the normal idea. You can see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 series in which things happen. But what about if it was just the other way around, as in the film? Just think for a moment in these countries using bidirectional languages such as Arabic or Hebrew. The interpretation would be just the other way around, from right to the left. Then the idea is different. That is somebody alive and kicking, drinking Coca-Cola, and dying. So that's the main idea of localization. What we call locale, L-O-C-A-L-E, locale. This is the main word, the root word from localization comes. And this word, locale, expresses, means the idea of the cultural, social, political, even religious, linguistic and technical differences between languages. Let's think normally in Europe we start the date with the day, month and year. And if you go to the States, the United States, or other English-speaking countries, it's just the other way around, year, month and day. So let's think about that in a general, in a broader scope, and this is the essence of localization. This adaptation to everywhere. Okay, so having this in mind, perhaps you have seen the acronym GILT, G-I-L-T. Okay, globalization, internationalization, localization, and translation. This is not the right order. It's, well, they managed to do it so that you can utter this word, this acronym. But the real order of things happening is that one. Internationalization, that it's the previous work to make a product or a service ready, international for everybody in terms of technical, linguistic, and any other issues. Let's think about, again, of these bidirectional languages in which you have to program from right to left, but from left to right for numbers. So this should be taken into account when a product or service is designed for users. Localization is adapting this product to the locales, namely to all countries with a specific difference in terms of anything, not only language, okay? Translation, we know what translation is, that it's a part of localization. It's just not the same, though they share a lot of features, you know. And globalization. Globalization is the final step in which this product that it's already localized goes to the whole world, and supported by the companies making this product or delivering this service. That is, they need to support the product to deliver documentation, the new releases, courses, etc., etc. So this is a cycle, always a continuing cycle of the product. Here you have the concepts. Let's go directly to localization. In brackets, you can see the usual acronym, okay? L10N for localization is the most typical. You can see the way Lisa, that it was the localization Industry Standards Association, that disappeared, how it was defined in 2000, year 2000. That is, the process involving the adaptation of the product to meet the linguistic, cultural, and other requirements applicable in a specific target environment or market, the so-called locale. But in my idea, this was missing something very important, the technical component. So years after, they tried to reduce this meaning by saying the process of modifying products or services to account for differences in distinct markets. Okay, differences. No specification of how the difference is. It could be, as I tell you, cultural, linguistic, social, religious, anything. And of course, all this has a technical component because you go to a software, to a website, to a video game, or to a mobile phone in which we have messages. Okay, so with this explanation, there is a differences between localization and translation. The main one, as you can read here, is that translation is only a phase of the whole process of localization. Perhaps the most important, but not the only one, because we have testing, we have engineering, we can have DTP, we have anything else, multimedia, audio, video, whatever. So there are some features which go beyond the pure linguistic field, as I told you, even cultural. When you are using a text related to localization, you are describing the product as it is internally, how it works, how it is. It is not only how it works, but the product itself. themselves. You have to go into the product and touch the code, the programming, so that it works. Whereas if you are translating, for instance, the instructions of a hairdryer, you are not translating the hairdryer itself, but its operation. That is the main difference. You have to go into the product and touch things, normally programming. Normally the user graphical user interface or the help, online help, okay? Normally, the translation of a document starts when this has been finished in its source language, whereas localization can start at the same time as the product is under development, even before that it's frozen, okay? Even before being released to the market. So, one very important thing, the first translation memories appear from multilingual environments related to localization, normally in computing multinationals. This is very important. If you see, you can see that this growth of market, in the language market of industry, language industries, call it as you will, language services, is going up and up every year, even very near the $50 billion a year last year. So we're talking about big figures. So take into account that more than half of it, of this thing, of these figures, come from localization. So it's extremely important to be there. How is a product or a service impacted by localization? Mainly three parts: programming, whereas software, or a website, because there is always some code below. Okay. We say about dates, even time, currencies, icons and color adaptation. This is very, it is not the same in all countries. Bidirectional languages, as we said before, Arabic and Hebrew. As to the contents tends to meet the standards, local standards and locales. Colors again, object size, formats, currencies. Even if you are in the UK, just driving just the way run as in other countries. Many aspects. Even in documentations, changes of the in the size of configuration of pages. There are many changes. The most influence of localization in this industry is that the profile of the translator, the so-called translator, linguist, localizer, philologist, call it as you will, language specialist, has dramatically changed due to this specialization provoked, caused by technology. So there is a generalized establishment of translation memories, as you know, and now even machine translation in other areas other than mere localization, though translation memories appear there, inside. So this establishment even of a specialist tools such as Pasolow or Catalyst, I don't know if you know them, increasing volumes for translation, increasing formats, and this provokes a teamwork effort and a constant networking of people working together because they are interdependent. Okay? Here you have an example of what a problem could be. This is called Magda la puta. La puta in Spanish means prostitute. Imagine for a moment that Mazda decides to keep this word all over the world and comes to Spain or to South America. And see the message. La puta gets improved. Safety features and upgraded interior. Attractive styling. Excellent maneuverability. Easy handling. Designed to withstand front collisions. La puta remains at approximately the same price level. This is a complete joke in Spanish if you preserve the name and you could say this happens. Yes, it happens. It happened in Spain with Mitsubishi Pajero that has a very sexual content in this word, and they have to change the name of Pajero to Montero in Spain. Okay, so this really happens. You can see other examples, and this is related to colors. In Mexico, the combination of lavender and black means bad luck. And Breniff Airlines have one of the airliners covering the route to Mexico was in this color, because this was an airliner company that changed the color of every plane. There were no two planes with the same configuration of colors. So you have an example of how this could impact. Or you have this orange in mobile telephony. This you can see on the upper part the logo that in Ireland could be a problem because it's related to the order of orange, that it was the let's say the party opposed to IRA. So this means a problem there. You have to be extremely careful with feelings. Or at least let's see this translation. Baby cucumbers, oh my god, perfect for snacks or entertaining. Please be careful, because this should be translated even in the source language. Is a problem. There could be misinterpretations. It's funny, yeah, okay, it's funny for everybody. You can laugh about it. But what about if you are the maker of this? You don't want to be the subject of these jokes, okay? There are many. Even we have problems with icons. There is no need for explanations in these icons. All of them real. Or in the next ones. Or even when you are using a specific logos. Be very careful. When you are using a logo or the name of a product, let's say for instance, if you there is a tonic water called how is the name in I don't remember the name, but in German, Nordic mist. Mist in German means bullshit. So shit. So be very careful with that. You cannot use it freely because you could have a problem of the market not buying your product. Okay? Okay, let's continue with the types of localization. We have four main groups. Software localization, that it was the main one, normally involving the translation of a graphical user interface, documentation, and online help. Web pages, that you have HTML on XML code, normally for a static or dynamic websites. It's different, the approach. Video games, very similar to software, but with many multimedia components. And mobile devices, all the messages appearing on our phones, you know that it's limited, very restricted to size. Here you have an example of the typical graphical user interface in a software. You have the menu, the message, and the dialog box, and you can find it like that when you're touching the source code. You have in red what it should be translated following some specific instructions, the menu items in this case, as you can see. We have an example of a dialog box. You see a lot of code there that you shouldn't touch, otherwise the dialog box would never work. We have the example of messages in source code, the easiest to translate but with no context when it's a problem. And you have a specific localization tool such as Catalyst, in which you can translate with the so-called WYSIWYG format. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. That is, as you translate it, you are seeing, you are checking how it looks like. Okay, you can see here this example of WinZip Self-Structure Personal Edition, in which these you can see some terms in English and some terms in Spanish already translated that are translated in the area below. And as soon as you validate with carriage return, the translation appears. This is very practical. But you can translate with Catalyst also in the so-called linear format, okay, without saying how it will look like. Just two column with English and in this case in Spanish. You have another similar tool called Pasolow with the same type and linear format. They are more or less the same thing and the most used in localization for this. And how competences? Well, competences years ago in one of my articles I said that we have here a lot of extra linguistic competences, sometimes soft competences. So you have to be very, very careful also with your profile. Let's say that at the moment I was recommended this linguistic correctness, basic computing knowledge, market-oriented specialization, CAD tools, project management, quality consciousness, teamwork, tolerance to stress, and some others. But the ISO 17100 quality standard that is referred to translation services reads the following: these 6 competences: translation, linguistic and textual competence, documentation and information processing competence, cultural competence, technological competence, and domain competence. That is your aptitude. Let's think, if you like tennis, as is my case, in Roger Federer, or let's think in Nadal, saying that it's more attitude than aptitude. Here we have these so-called soft skills such as teamwork, modesty, stress tolerance, commitment, thoroughness, criticism, and self-criticism ability. For this specialized translation, I'm working in a project with the University of Vienna and the Budapest, my company, the so-called e-transfer. I recommend you to enter there because there you will have videos and in the future and materials for teaching some aspects of localization to students, and they are for free. Please enter in this web page. You can register and share and use all these things, and even give your feedback and everything and your suggestions. My recommendation, this is the web page where you can enter and take your whatever you need. He's the YouTube channel for e-transfer, in which you have all the videos. For instance, on the right side you can see Sergio Calvo, Spanish specialist in terminology, talking about terminology. In these competences that it's covered, that I supposed to be there in year 2000 and afterwards in the translation industry standard, in e-transfer competences you have all these one, more or less the same but more split. You can see translation competence, language, intern transcultural competence, revision and review competence, extremely important, that one. Domain specific competence, technological competence, information mining and terminological competence, and professional competence, meaning with project management and knowing the industry, and whom normally localization sometimes only is present in the grade translation and interpreting grades, and normally very present in post-graduation courses because it's something more specialized, you know. There is a need of intensive hands-on practice for this. It's not difficult, but you need practice, and this practice should be guided by a specialist. The use of tools applied to translation industry is extremely important. Students aim at technological and professional profile to be fit to this real-world translation industry knowledge, and companies look for trainees versed on translation competences and on soft skills. As I told you, this is the people to whom it's addressed, you know. And you have why? Because it's very important. It's so important that the European Union has a lot of past, present, and future programs to try to know which the competence of the specialized translators are, and all of these projects you can see here are related to that, to fix these competences, okay? So, expectations in higher education centers from industry mainly cover internships for the students, show the students how real work and professional translation companies work, receive feedback from companies, cooperate with companies in training programs, and cooperate with companies in funded European and national projects. And the expectations in industry from higher education centers are closer to industry needs with more realistic programs, know the change in professional profiles in industry, invite practitioners of the whole industry, not only translators, provide internship students who really fit the required profile, not only the linguistic ones, and send lecturers to companies to see the real world. This is the ideal world. Remember that goals have not changed that much. Processes have. And this is what should be taught to students, to not only theory, but also processes of real world. You have here the processes according to ISO standard. You can see that it's nearly 20 steps in which the blue one are all compulsory in any project, okay? You can see it afterwards, because this is the whole scenario of a company, okay? In a company, you have all these profiles, a translation company, and all these possibilities of a specialization. And what's missing? Well, mainly synergy between academy and industry. And my final recommendations are that higher education institutions look for companies to get weight in funded projects, but afterwards they tend to ignore them. This happened to my company. I want to be in a project just to share my views because they are very practical. And good initiatives usually come from individuals rather than institutions. Fortunately, my institution, Alfonso the 10th University, this happens. I am supported by them, but this not always is the case. And listen to what industry has to say and what it needs, including programs, not only the typical translation aspects, but also professionalism and soft skills, and of course IT, and including programs, modules on translation, project management, and machine translation post-editing. My recommendations is that some companies are avid of interns for simple exploitation too, I know, and as a means to lower their production costs. Be careful when organizing your internships. This is my recommendation to institutions, higher education institutions. Internships should be paid in some way, otherwise it's pure exploitation. And after graduation, students could need around 2 years in a real-world environment to develop all the translation and professional skills. So this cooperation with companies is very important to reduce the learning curve. And a preference for students coming from post-graduation courses or masters, as the level of knowledge and experience is usually higher for companies. And the ultimate goal of this is reduce new professionals' learning curve, as I told you. This is as you can see, I am trying to practice what I preach, and my company cooperates with all these universities in a normal way, and that's all. So if you have any doubts, I will be very happy just to answer your questions. I have seen that you have written some things. I can try, if you want, I can try to answer some of them, okay? Or we can go to the next step.
Juan José, прошу прощения, перерыв.
Allow me to jump in at this point. We will address all of these questions as planned. We see all of them in our chat box. We're picking the best ones. And right now we will first cover our own obligatory questions, and then we will go to our audience questions. So to announce the first question, I give the floor to Irina. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you. I believe that everybody who is logged in are very jealous of Juan José's students. I'm very excited as well how you managed to combine all of these aspects. So my first question would be kind of philosophical. So I would very much like to learn what was the initial purpose of the program. You as the director, how do you see this purpose? Just to train specialists? For them to be fit very well for your own company, or maybe you have wider and more general purpose?
Say that my first idea when I started in year 2000 was a bit egoistic, let's say like that, in a professional, from a professional point of view. Okay, when I started to be practicing in this industry, I suffered a lot because I had to learn things from myself. I didn't have anybody with me letting me know some things that were very, very basic. And I promised to myself that if I had a chance at any moment in my life, just to try to fix this. So I think that I didn't know, but I have some kind of academic instinct that takes me to the university. And my first idea was to make sure that this student coming out of at least from my classes, my lectures, should know what really happens in a professional industry. Because I was interested in taking the good students to my company so that the learning curve the way they are more productive or more and provide more high quality translations was reduced because, of course, in companies we are not ONGs, so we need money. We need to be productive and to be profitable. So there was a two-folded idea. One of them to make sure that students go out and know what they are going to find, and take the best ones to my company. But this was the beginning. After that, I can tell you that 100% of my post-graduation course on localization, all of them are hired in 1 or 2 weeks, and most of them for internships. And after that, most of them continue to work in these companies or in others, because they are normally 2 or 3 months and they start to know what really happens. But we have practiced it all before in the classes, because all the teachers in this post-graduation and others in which I cooperate with, that I don't manage, but I cooperate with them, try to replicate this model, just doing things in class that are done in professional industry. In fact, all my exercises are based on real cases and that are adapted by myself to avoid names, commercial names and things like that, but always with things that happen in a certain moment in real life.
Thank you very much for your response. I will try to combine two questions. One that we have prepared, the other one is an audience question. What is the proportion of the technological and linguistic part of your program? As Irina said before, today the academia is trying to get the necessary direction to follow localization. So what is the proportion of linguistics and technology in your program?
Yes, well, not only technology, but also, let's call it professionalism, okay? Knowing what happens beyond translation, project management, knowing the processes, even knowing the standards, all these things. So let's say 3 parts, okay? The purely linguistic part, the technological or technical part, and the professional part. I would there. It depends on the uh, on the universities. They can move this proportion. In my case, I would say that it's 1/3 for each other, because you need, of course, this basic language knowledge that it's sometimes more theoretical, knowing your source and target language or languages, and then you have to know how things happen, how when a customer or a prospect requests a service, you have to know how to quote it, you have to know how to proceed if the quotation is approved, you have to assign resources, you have to translate, you have to revise, you have to review, you have to proofread, you have to do a lot of other things that are interconnected, this so-called professionalism. And of course, user knowledge, more than user knowledge of tools, CAD tools. Um, let's put an example. If I receive a resume or CV of somebody that has the a technical competence, and the other one is just in the same level of expertise, but there is no CAD tools knowledge, then I will go for the one that has this meaning, this experience, this knowledge. So it's they are more or less in the same place. If you control all the CAD tools, but you don't know how to translate, you are done also. So it's you have to look some kind of balance between theory and practice. Theory, it's necessary. You have to know the history of translation. You have to know the schools of translation theory. It's necessary, but you have to supplement it at the same level with practice.
Thank you so much. So fascinating, and it's getting even more exciting. The next question regards your graduates. Juan Jose, you mentioned in your speech that graduates find a workplace almost immediately after graduation. But what companies do they work in? What working environment do they get into? Do you have any employment statistics or any data regarding employment?
Yes, indeed. When I'm talking companies at this moment, yeah, it means translation companies or industry, translation or language service industry companies, okay? They are not, well, sometimes you go to a different company of a different industry, let's say to verticals. But normally they are horizontal companies. I mean, horizontal industry companies, translation, or at least whose main activity is translation. I'm talking of post-graduation. In the case of graduation, it's more difficult because they don't have any idea. Sometimes if you are in the grade, you have subjects that you don't like, and perhaps you consider that you have to do them because they are in the program. And sometimes they are compulsory, but you are not very happy with them. It happens to everybody. But if you go to a post-graduation or a master, or you are there because you like it probably, or you are interested in it. So the way in which you tackle these lectures is completely different as the grade. So you are more motivated, more involved, and this is very important for the internships. And then once these students have completed the part of technology, they are ready to go to internships, perhaps with more or less success. It depends on the individual, of course, and even sometimes in the company. But let's say that after 10 years of this post-graduation course, companies know it very well. They know me too, and they come to me and they say, what about the students of this year? Because we will need 2 or 3. I say, okay, let's wait to February, in which they will be ready to go there, and I will pass you all the CVs and you select them. And normally all of them, even before finishing this graduation course, they are working in an internship and always paid. If these internships are not paid, I don't accept it at all. So in some cases in which it's more difficult, or they finish their internships, they can go to another company or just keep in the same. In my case, if I take a student for an internship, my idea is to keep him or keep her in my company, because there is an investment of money in teaching this guy, and I want to take some return of this investment in the future with more productivity or whatever. So in this case, for me, it's necessary to have an internship with the idea of having it before, not just to use him or use her and say goodbye. No. And normally in these companies, the idea is the same one. Try to cover some gap or some need they have. And I have statistics about it, and 80% of our students are in under employment in 1 or 2 weeks, and the rest in 1 month.
Спасибо большое, Хуан Хосе, за...
Thank you very much, Juan Jose, for such an engaging answer. And my next question is as follows. How do you verify the translation qualification of your trainers in your university, and what is the verification interval? In Eastern Europe, we often criticize our trainers that they teach by books instead of being practitioners. And this is very critical, and that affects the quality of students. And we have a positive experience of one German school of Hildesheim. They use this interpreting qualification for translators, for interpreters, and trainers should verify their qualification over a certain period. Then over to you.
I couldn't hear you very well. I couldn't understand because it's very high. The volume is very high, and there was some kind of distortion, and there was a beep at the. In my case, could you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Повторю вопрос еще раз.
I will surely repeat. How and do your trainers verify their translation qualification, their practical experience for interpreting or translation or number of words, localized words or translated words? Is it mandatory? Is it verified somehow? Is there a procedure for that? The postulate of a translator or a localization trainer that must be always a practitioner. Is it so in your case?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Well, it depends. In my opinion, not for a graduation course, there is no need for a practitioner to be always a teacher. No, at all. But in the case of post-graduation courses, I recommend to have a high number of practitioners, not only due to the fact that they are touching the industry every day and they know the latest news and technologies, but also they have very important contacts for networking and to make these students go into real positions in market. So this is extremely important. But there is no fixed rule to a proportion, so there should be a combination. And in the case of qualifications or number of words, or as you say, I'm dealing with translation only, not with interpreting. So in case of interpreters, I cannot tell you. But we use, even in the classes, the real metrics of industry. For instance, if we are doing an exercise, we are trying to see if they have an output of 3,000 words a day. If they are revising, we're using, for instance, 1,500 words per hour revised, and things like that. We try to use real metrics so that the impact or the shock when they go to real world is not so appealing. So that's the idea.
Juan Jose, you take part in translation standards. You develop them. You use them. What is the role of translation standards? Are they always positive? Do they have any drawbacks? This is a critical question for me, because now I'm an expert in developing a translation standard, and this matters for me. We do that in Russia now.
Okay, for me, translations are essential. Translation standards are essential. Not by the fact that I am chairing the Spanish committee for this and I'm in the ISO committee for that. Due to experience, normally in industry we didn't have any reference, something written as a code of good practices, because this is what a standard really is, a code of good practices. If you take any standard, you won't see that we are reinventing the wheel. We are putting in place all the things that should be recommended to be done in a process of translation. Take into account that the committees for creating these standards are formed by translation companies, individual translators, freelancers, universities as entities, academic lecturers and professors in an individual part, not representing the companies, the universities, professional associations, standardization specialists, and even representation of customers of public administration. So everybody is represented in these national committees that go to the international committee to talk each other and negotiate and reach agreements. This is the way standards work. Before that, 2006, I think that it was the first one, the the European standard 15038 that was displaced now by the ISO 1, the 17100. There was nothing before than that, no reference. So it was as some kind of, as I told you, code of good practices, and companies, translation companies, and even individual translators could be certified to it or not. You are not obliged to do it, but in the case of a company, you can manage to get customers with this, because you with this stamp or the logo of your certification, you are saying to the world that you're trying to do the things right and according to some procedures agreed upon by the specialists of the industry, for the whole industry, not only translators but academy too. In Spain, for instance, if you are according to the new higher education European environment, the Boulogne plan, as it's called, we have to redo all the programs. We have to do the program for translation interpreting in my university and others, and the Spanish accreditation entity for universities had to approve these individual grades by any university. Well, the main reference taken into account for that by this academic accreditation service was the quality standard, because it's representing what is happening in the in industry. So for me, it's absolutely important to have this as a reference. You can follow it or not, up to you, but it's there, and I think that it's there for good, for to be used by everybody in industry if they want. In the case of my company, it's essential. I managed to get some very important customers, by the way, one of them Russian, thanks to this standard, because we were certified. Otherwise, we couldn't be able to do it. Even there are bids in Spain and even in Europe in which you cannot bid for that. You cannot send your tender if you are not certified.
Thank you for your response, Juan Jose. I would like to combine two questions, though they're quite different. There are a lot of questions from the audience. In order for us to be able to ask them, we need to speed up. Which are your partners in translation schools? And the second question, what would you necessarily change in your master's course? What would you like to improve? Over to you.
Yeah, well, let's say when you're talking about partners, you say academic partners or professional partners. It depends. Well, I let's say that I am in the middle of this scenario. Okay, I am
Из вузовской среды.
From academia, from academic environments. From academic environments. From academia. Academic partners.
understood at the end. But if you're talking about this, I am in the middle of this process. So I'm connecting a company, in this case, my company, to my university system, because I am dealing with individual subjects in the grade, and I run the post-graduation. In this case, my partners for the academic partners for the post-graduation course are normally practitioners related to university in some way, or pure practitioners that are going there to explain, for instance, expense and disappear from university until next year. And in the case of the partners of a university, my colleagues normally giving regular lectures there. I know if this was the question, because partners could have a different interpretation. And the second one was, what could be improved in my program? Well, to have more hours. We have, at this moment, we have nearly 400 hours, but we need more. We need more because Always when you send the feedback forms to students, they say, I would like to have more time in website localization or in macros or in machine translation and post-editing. It's very difficult with so reduction sometimes of hours to reach everything at all. But we try to be as flexible as possible. So I would need more time, because every year we do little changes in the program according to the needs of the students or the needs of market, because something new appeared. For instance, we usually to give a module on déjà vu, but déjà vu is not so used, and we had changed it, for instance, to MemoQ or other tool. I give you one name, commercial name, but it depends. It depends. Or we can go, well, we need more time for post editing, so let's go up. This in this case, when this happens at the end of the course, a group of teachers meets and decides what to do for the next year.
Indeed, we have to speed up because there are a lot of questions. Then I have to switch from one to another. I would like to ask about the mother tongue. Your translators should know a lot, but they formulate things in good mother tongue. How do you take care of maintaining this level of mother tongue and developing it?
Reads and recommends, well, more than recommends, he said shall, not should. It reads that the translations should be always done to your mother tongue. This is basic in the professional industry. We know that sometimes it does not happen, but the way, let's say, in which this post-graduation course is oriented at is at the technical part. If you want to improve your master of a target language or your even source language, that could happen, you should go to a different course, not localization. Localization is a course related to the technical, mainly the technical part, this technical side. Remember that we have three different sides: the theory, or the way you manage to learn languages, and the professional one and the technical one. In this case, what we do is just to join this professional and technical part. Of course, you have to translate something because you have to practice, but it's not oriented at translation itself. One thing, I'm looking at a lot of marvelous questions there. I don't know if we will have times. For instance, the last one from Patricia Rodriguez Martinez saying that which processes and procedures have you put in place with universities? Normally we have agreements with universities to cover these internships, mostly directly from the company to university. By the way, 3,000 words per day, and Alexander is a bit astonished perhaps. This is the standard rate in industry, okay? And we try to let our students know when they listen to this for the first time, they want to open the window and jump out. But they will realize that in a few months they will be able to reach this with a very good quality. So it's absolutely possible.
Thank you so much for your response. Our next question. You have already covered your tight cooperation with universities and with academia as such. However, we would like you to elaborate what schools, what universities do you collaborate with? In one of the universities, you have your own master's program. What about other universities? What about other educational establishments? in Spain. Could you please elaborate on this?
It depends. As I told you, it has to do more with an individual attitude than an institutional one. In some cases, universities have come to me asking for cooperation in some way or another, always with an interest for internships, but I say, well, okay, internships, but I want something else. I want to know what your program is, if it's realistic, if these interns could be used in different companies, not only in mine, because the profile is adapted to reality, all these types of things. We don't want to go just there for nothing, but just to give a helping hand and try to refine things, okay? Uh, uh, and when I go, sometimes it's the other way around. I go to universities and saying, what possibility do we have for that, or that, and that? When I go to a program different than mine in a university, I always try to recommend things. Well, I'm playing with some advantage because they know that I am the chairman of the Spanish Association of Translation Companies, and they want to be closer to what's really in in industry. So they want to know at least information, to get information. But it depends, as I told you, sometimes on an individual aptitude. There are universities that they are not interested at all, or they don't know what translation is about, though they have these studies. But some others, they are really interested. As I told you, sometimes it's more related to a personal connection than an institutional one. It's very interesting. From Kate, what is the best way to gain experience in localization but not working in a company? I always recommend for a new student or new translator that has just come out from university to start to work in a company if possible. Because if you want to do it by yourself as a freelancer at the beginning, it could be very, very hard. And perhaps you won't get the money you need every month and so on. But if you're in a company, you are paid, you are taught in different things, not only translation, but processes and things like that. And I think that in 2 years, you can be able to go and jump to freelance world if you want. But otherwise, you will miss a lot of things. After all these 2 years, you are ready to tackle any problem by yourself, not with the help of others. So this is my recommendation. Perhaps it goes against companies' interests, but I could say that first of all, go to a company, learn there, and you will see what happens. Sometimes you say, okay, I'm perfectly here, so I will stay here, or not.
I'm going to announce my last question because we have so many on the list. What stereotypes do recent graduates or young translators have? So one of the stereotypes that you already spoke about is that they would love to become freelancers just as they graduate. What other stereotypes are there?
Very typical. Everybody in industry at the beginning think of an ideal freelance world, you know, and it's the normal development of a translator. At least some time ago. Why? Because it was a very individual, isolated way of working, you know. But now with technology, with the window of the internet, with tools, with cooperation, with very big volumes, you need cooperation. You need to teamwork. You need a lot of things and processes that are even better than with more people involved than by yourself. Of course, if you are a freelancer, you can share things with other freelancers, but you are not in the same place, you are not working with the same tools perhaps, with the same processes, you are not under the umbrella of an organization. So, but the main idea of any recent graduates is to become a freelancer. But this was more obvious some time ago. From 5 years to here, I think that it's more balanced. And at the beginning, the students think of being in a company before. The way is changing, but it's due to the fact that the industry is changing too. The change of paradigm of translation has changed from an art. Translation is an art, and it continues to be. But apart from that, after memories, translation memories appeared, we can talk about some kind of service, because we're talking about some kind of inventories of words we have there that we have to process and convert it into a product. So in some cases it's also interpreted as a commodity. So there is a big change in that, and we have to assume it and think that the profiles and roles could change, and they are changing indeed. By the way, thank you very much. If this is my last appearance on scene, thank you very much to interpreters. That I hope not to speak very fast. And thanks again for this hidden um, uh, hidden work, but absolutely necessary for all of us.
Thank you so much, Juan Jose, for answering our questions. Now I would like to go to the questions on the audience side. You have noticed there are multiple of them. One of the questions that caught my eye is as follows. This is a question by Alex. Alex asks, is it possible to involve universities to bring some qualitative changes in the company? How can universities, on the other hand, help companies? Because sometimes it happens the other way around. Companies get interns from universities, they help them, they nourish them and so on. They give feedback to the university to update and improve the program. But how can universities help companies? This is a question.
I told you it depends on the people involved in the process of adapting the grades. If these people are working in industry as practitioner, or do you have contacts, or are really interested in helping their students in the future, they come to you with proposals. More than proposals, they look for ideas of what is happening in industry. So normally it is a movement more usually coming from companies to universities. The idea, the way, why? Because companies depend on customers. And customers can change the way you work. They could specify a requirement of using a specific CAD tool, or even a proprietary tool. So you are depending on your customer, and the way you work, it depends on many things: the customer, the environment, the professional associations, the standards, and all that. If the universities are outside that, they don't know what is really happening, and they have to come back there to industry to know, or even just they do nothing, and you can see this lack of interest reflected in the programs. I can see programs of universities in Spain offering translation services, offering translation grades that do not support project management. That it's absolutely basic in industry. If you are not dealing with project management in industry, you cannot work. So as I told you, it depends more individual ideas, but normally this influence comes most from the industry to the university than just the other way around, as far as my experience is concerned, at least.
Another question. What is the proportion of extra-linguistic and linguistic competences that your program trains and your program teaches?
It's difficult to say a figure, but let's say that, to sum up, uh, 75% it's more related to linguistics in general, or technology, and these soft skills, let's call it like that, these are related more to attitude with T than aptitude with P. Let's say this 25%. The first one, for me, the most important one is modesty. The second one is modesty. And the third one is also modesty. Especially when you are revised. You have to be very critic with yourself first. It's absolutely essential.
The next question from Yevgeny. What do you think about soft skills? Soft skills, especially at different conferences, they're brought up all the time. Are they really that important, or is this just a fashion trend? And a question on my side. Are soft skills and hard skills interconnected? And if they are, how are they interconnected?
No, it's not a trend. You can be the best translator in the world, but you are not able to tolerate stress, to deal with deadlines. If you don't know how to talk with a customer, if you are not able to support your colleague when he needs a helping hand, if you don't need I don't know. There are so many possibilities. You are working with people, not with machines. So you can see in an area of 10 persons, 10 different persons. If you are the project manager, you have to know how element 1, element 2, element 3, element 4 persons work and how they interact each other. You know that with this person you need more time to to do a revision because his linguistic fitness in this moment is not very good. And you know that the other one you have to say things in another way because it's very special. Many possibilities. So you need to interact. You have to be sometimes proactive, sometimes reactive. You have to be synergetic. You have to use that every day with everybody. If you are a pure translator, okay, you can survive only with the hard skills. But if you are dealing with people as a project manager or a reviser or something like that, you do really need it. Absolutely, absolutely. This was the first part of the question. I don't remember the second one. I think that it was the second part of it.
Well, you actually answered it already. The interrelation between hard skills and soft skills. You covered it already.
Okay. I didn't much. I don't remember what I was saying.
That's why we invited you, because you're so talkative, because we need information. We like when you share it. We have another question from Yevgeny. It regards future prediction. You spoke about 10% of literary translation and 90% of translation that requires technologies. Do you think this ratio is going to change in future? Because machine translation is taking over the industry? Or how is it going to change in future? What do you think?
If you go to translators forums, you will always see some time ago the typical message. Well, machine translation is going to kill human translators. We don't have work. Blah blah blah. If you remember this graphic that I show you again, this chart related to growth, you can see that it goes up. Why? Because now with machine translation, some costs are cheaper And some companies that some time ago couldn't afford a translation, now they can. So we have more work, but the way in which the industry will evolve is different. We will continue to have translators, human translators, always, but we will need some kind of a specialization too, not only technical but also technological regarding machine translation and especially post-editing, because post-editors are not only revisers of machine translation output. They are much more than that. They have to have a technical, technological flair to let the engineer know why this machine translation engine is not working as expected. You should have these changes because I noticed this wrong pattern, blah, blah, blah. So post-editing is one of the future trends, and now not only future, current. In my company, we receive a lot of post-editing. And you cannot see machine translation as an enemy, but as a supplement to translation memories and things like that. And you can be much more productive if you use it well, but thinking of it as a means, not as an end. Okay, it's the ultimate end is not translation memory; it's machine translation. It's a means, a way to help you with this, but not always can you find customers that think like that. There are customers that think that they can do everything with translation, with machine translation, and it's not possible. Why? You say about the literary translation. I think that this proportion shouldn't change very much. Why? Because machine translation is perfect. You can use it if you're talking about non-creative translation. That it's users manuals, question and answer sections on websites, immediate messages, even email translation to know the gist of an email in a different language and things like that. But if you go to creative translations, it's impossible to use machine translation. You cannot machine translate a poem, a literary thing. When I say literary, I mean real literature. I'm not talking about editorial translation, okay? I mean literary translation. For instance, translation of Fyodor Dostoevsky's works, or Cervantes' works, or Shakespeare's works. It's impossible. Or even modern literature. You have to go to a very specific part of it in which you can see how the rate of use of machine translation is high and higher and higher. Of course, it's normal, especially now with the neural machine translation, the last wave of translation technology.
Да, очень
A very interesting question, probably from a tutor, from Francesca Maria Fritella, from practitioners who train translation. Do they need a didactical training? Do they need to know didactics? Do they need to know how to teach translation? An additional question from the same person. How do you define the quality of translation training? What is the high quality translation training and how to attain this quality?
Well, as to didactics, I think that it's necessary. When I started, I realized that now, looking backwards, things that I'm not doing now that I used to do at the beginning. So it's necessary to have a certain background. Fortunately, my university gave it to me, and sometimes experience gave it to you. But if you are taught on that, it's perfect. But it's absolutely necessary, at least a minimum. absolutely, because you have to deal with students of many profiles and ideas and abilities and skills. So you have to know how to handle that in cases of crisis and things like that. How to define teaching quality? The way in which we are assessed is normally here, at least in Spain, is with surveys with students. But you know that the survey can be a tool of revenge for a student. So apart from that, one way I used to do my own, apart from the official surveys of the my university, where I do my own ones adapted to my needs. And one of the things I do is at the beginning I pass a list of things in which they point from one, the score from 1 to 5, some issues or aspects of this subject. And at the end, I pass them again the same survey so that they can write the score at this moment. And I see with this evaluation, I can at least I can know if my lectures have been fruitful and useful for them. Normally they are, and normally this is also reflected in the official surveys, but it's very difficult to define. At least in Spain, it depends on the different assessment methods of the of the uh, of the universities. And a good method to ensure such quality, it's very, very, very difficult. It's very difficult because it depends on so many variables. It depends on the interest of the students, or the attitude of students, or the attitude of teachers, or the aptitude of teachers to many variables, many variables. Normally, if you are you are in a university that is ISO certified, mine is certified with ISO, two, two, to the 100%, so everything in my university is certified. So in this case, you have internal methods to measure, to assess the performance, and we have some different metrics regarding as I told you, normally surveys. For me, the most useful one is the face-to-face feedback of students and the attitude of students. Normally, also the progress of the scores, of the grades. As I told you, there are official methods, but I am my own ones to supplement each other. So I have two different perspectives: the university one and mine.
Вот, наверное, последний вопрос, который я успею задать.
Probably the last question I will ask, this question is from Kate, is about the need of postgraduate education in order to become a modern standard translator, or the general education would suffice. Is postgraduate that mandatory in the real world today or not?
Well, in terms of education of translators, I think that it's we were in Spain some time ago when I was studying that translation itself didn't exist at university. It was I had to study the so-called English philology, and after that what I did was a master on literary and specialized translation in the same university. And were we able to translate? Yes. Even philologists can have a good advantage over the pure translator, but he or she doesn't know how to use procedures and technology, so it's supplementary in some cases. This is covered in the ISO standard. Do you remember that there were 6 competences? That it was language, technology, terminology, domain, I don't remember the other one, the two others. Well, it was 6. We are in a hurry due to time. I don't have any hurry. I'm not in a hurry at all, but perhaps you are. And then to achieve these competences, you have 3 ways. One of them to be graduated in translation or equivalent, because not all over the world translation is interpreted as translation. It could be languages or whatever. That is graduated in translation or equivalent, or other grades, for instance, law or medicine, plus 2 documented, is very important, 2 documented years of full-time as translator, or even nothing, no graduation, but 5 years of documented experience as a full-time translator. We have these profiles in Spain, I think, all over the world. One of the best, the best Spanish translator of medicine, that is Fernando Navarro, is a doctor, is graduated in medicine, and is translating because his abilities, his linguistic skills are marvelous. Even is in the Royal Academy of Medicine, so you can guess. And we have another people. I know one of the best audiovisual translators in Spain started to study history and didn't finish. And he's a very good one translator, and even is giving courses on linguistics. So this is very relative, this diploma, this title, you know. The thing is what you have here and your ability to let it go out. So it's not a matter of a document. It's a matter of aptitude or ability or knowledge, call it as you will.
Спасибо большое, Хуан Хосе.
Thank you, Juan Jose. I now suggest that we ask 2 more questions and then we summarize, because we're out of our schedule. I will ask a question with a trick, so to speak, from Kate. She's asking, how do you assess your students in localization? What matters more, theory or practice? I believe she's a student herself. Juan Jose, over to you.
The way we assess our localization students is always practice. For instance, they have to translate a piece of software. Well, not a full one, or a small one, or some source code files, or they have to translate, and they have to translate and compile an online help. And they have to, for instance, to create macros, or they have to post-edit or assess a post-editing project, always practical. In this case, as I told you, it's localization course is not based on the on theory. It's in the other 2 parts I told you: professionalism, technology. For instance, in professionalism and project management, one of my subjects, I ask always for a project plan for a customer requiring a project of a number of words, different services, and I request a quotation, and afterwards a project plan, for instance, but always practical. Well, if I don't know if I will be able to speak.
Juan Jose,
Juan Jose, I have so many questions to ask, but I would like to ask you one question. It is of ethical essence. Have you ever rejected a project, rejected to work with a young professional, with a recent graduate, and if yes, why?
Myself or a student? Well, I can tell you. As a company, we can afford to say no to a customer if this is impossible, because sometimes customer could ask for something impossible, or we have requested to post-edit a text in which customers say it's a perfect quality, our engines are perfect, and when you receive it, it's rubbish. And they say, or you don't say rubbish to the customer, of course. We say that they don't have enough quality for translation. And how do we know that? Because we have developed some tools to check this output, whether it is called the potential distance factor that it's called, and things like that. This is in the case of me as a company. But when I was a freelancer, it's very risky to say no. But taking into account that it's something that I'm able to do, and I can do it. If I am requested, and this is the ethical point, if I am requested something related to, let's say, to nuclear physics, as a freelancer, I couldn't do it because I don't know. It was stupid because I could do it, but it could be rubbish for that customer and lose that customer. And I say to my students that if you fail in the first call, you have a second call to pass. But in industry, professional industry, you don't have a second call. If you lose a customer, it's very difficult to recover it. If it's due to your failure of a poor quality or whatever. And in the case of students, sometimes some companies have requested uh, students for for internship, and I have to say very diplomatically to the student or to the company, that's not the case. It's already busy. Somebody more fit, because not all students are able to fit in the company, and just the other way around. Sometimes people, they are very prepared for this job, but the company is not good. As I told you, I always control internships in my course. That's why this feeling, this synergy between uh, students and companies are normally successful, and they continue to work like that, to keep on working on this company. I hope that I answer the question. And if I don't have the chance to say it again.
Да.
Thank you very much. And I will use this chance to say goodbye. I appreciate that we learned so much about this new, quite modern topic. This topic changes our mindset and changes the whole profession, and it proves again that we always need to keep abreast, we always need to keep up to date, and we always need to keep learning, acquiring new skills, acquiring new competencies. Thank you so much, Juan Jose, for such a prolific discussion. Thank you so much.
Well, this is absolutely true. What you say, that you have to keep updated and everything. One of my pieces of advices, the most typical one, there are two. One is that I hire by aptitude and I fire by attitude. That's very important. Remember these hard skills and soft skills. And the other one is that a translator or a linguist, let's call it linguist, a linguist, and every person must learn every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every month of every year in your life. You always have to be updated, and remember Socrates, that I know that I don't know anything. So that way you can keep your pace with technology, because it's very changing in this industry, and this is very important. And then as you can see, I always in front of this cooperation between academy and business, but it's absolutely important for both sides. It's symbiotic, and we need each other. The problem is that sometimes we don't know it, that we are necessary for each other. So thank you very much again, Irina, Alexander, for this opportunity to give my ideas to all of you. I could be here 2 or 3 hours talking and talking, and it's a pity that I couldn't answer all the questions that I saw in this list, or sometimes in Russian. I couldn't answer in this case, and I hope that perhaps in the future we can have more talks, or even an open talk to everybody, just a series of questions and answers. I will be always available, and if somebody here in the audience want to know anything about anything too, please feel free to write to me. I will be very happy to answer. And even if you are in a university, give my ideas, or who knows, it could be the beginning of some cooperation. You never know. So thank you very much again. Thanks again to the interpreters for this hard and hidden work, but as told you, always necessary. And well, Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you very much. Spasiba and muchas gracias.
Е,
Thank you so much, Juan Jose, to you again. Actually, we were not expecting such a huge list of questions. As always, we say to our listeners, to our participants, that our webinar is finishing, but our communication is not finishing. If you still have questions, you can do this in our channel. You can post your questions on Facebook. We will let Juan Jose know of all of these questions, and we will later provide answers to them. So our communication, our dialogue persists. It doesn't finish with the end of the seminar. We will address all of the pending questions, and we will post the written answers on all our social networks, on Facebook, on YouTube, on our official website as well. We would also like to invite other professionals, other schools, or anybody who has their story to share, who wants their voices to be heard. Please, you're so welcome. We would very welcome all of your voices, all of your ideas, anything that you like to share with us. Let's have a webinar and let's spread the word. All of our contact information and details are on the website. Thank you everybody one more time. Thank you, Juan Jose. Hope to see you again in Trans Academy. Happy Christmas and New Year. All the best of luck to you. Goodbye.